All right. Steampunk. Not really what I'm looking for. Tomb Raider. Nope. And we have some pirates. Nah, not really. Dragon Hunters. Nope. Orcs and Goblins. As cool as they are, not really what I'm looking for. Neither am I looking for elves and dwarves. Oh, very cool. Not what I'm looking for. Parallel. That's getting close. Exile. Wait a minute. Right. Exile. All right. So Exile. It's a graphic novel, and I often get the question where I get all my inspiration for my games from. So this is really part of it. Of course, also TV shows and movies and all that stuff. But graphic novels, comic books, they're just very nice as a visual reference to get information and get inspired by them to draw stuff. And right now I'm looking for sci-fi, and I noticed I don't have a lot of sci-fi graphic novels, which should probably be something I have to remedy pretty soon. But for now I found something, and let's take it up to the studio and talk about residual. And then I'll be able to draw more stuff. So let's go up. Right, inspiration. We got some cool inspiration. I really need more sci-fi comics, graphic novels, but for now, there's inspiration here. Because I'm working on a lot of content, drawing a lot of stuff, and animating it, building the code for it. And I've been sharing some stories on Instagram, so make sure to check Insta stories, because then sometimes you see me draw them and animate them and turn them into stuff, and that's just very short little snippets that don't really work well in the YouTube videos. Sometimes they do, but more than often than not they don't, and then I just post them on Instagram. So check those stories, although these stories I just mentioned will be gone by the time you're watching this. I'm sure I'll make new stories for you. Check Instagram. Anyway, let's talk about residual. Okay, so last week I talked about the whole residual Kickstarter campaign, and you should check out that video if you want to hear about it, and you should really subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I don't say that a lot, but you really should. Anyway, today we're gonna talk about the game, because last week's video was not about the devlog, which means I have to cover 2 weeks of game development. Luckily, I can combine it in just maybe 3 highlights and 3 topics, so that's what we're gonna do. And the first topic is the Visor. A few weeks ago I implemented this Visor, and I already knew back then that this was not gonna be the end result of it, because it was just to try out the interface and try out the whole effect of it, and having the player capable of activating the Visor and using it. But I always knew there was gonna be more information on that screen, so I also knew there was not gonna be enough room to have all that information there. So now I've added tab pages, which means you can navigate through different areas of the Visor and different type of information, so that you don't have to see everything at once. Because I can imagine that once you know the planet is hot or cold, you don't really need all that information. So I might just end up moving that even further down or in the back or somewhere you don't really need it. But for now, it's an interesting tab, and we have the first one shows you a bit about your suit and about your health and all that stuff. The second tab page is a new type of radar I implemented, and this is going to be interesting because it will allow you to quickly find new resources that you need. Something towards that goal. I haven't completely figured it out yet. If I had, I would have implemented it, so it will change again, but at least now we have the option to add tab pages and all that code is written. So that makes it a lot easier to add more information and data as we go. Moving us to the second topic, a lot of new creatures have been added to the game. Pretty much my main concern right now, from now till the end of the game, is making sure there's enough content there, and content means creatures, but also obstacles like doors and switches. So in short, everything you see and interact with, That's my main focus for the rest of the year. The systems are up and running in the game. I might add more systems, I might change them, but all that stuff is working and in the game right now. So to make this a great and interesting game, we just need a lot of content. And especially since this whole game is procedural, I just want to have enough creatures that you can actually play a couple of rounds, a couple of new games, without running into all of the creatures available. So that's going to be a lot of creatures. They might just be alternate versions of existing creatures, don't know yet, but just need to add a lot of content in the coming weeks. So I started with a bunch of creatures and things added to the game, and I also really had to sit down and come up with ideas on how to interact with them or tackle them or avoid them, because as mentioned at the start of this whole devlog series, I'm not gonna add any weapons to this game. Trust me, I have been really swearing at myself and really pissed at myself for saying those things, but I'm gonna stick to it. I just need to figure out how to work around that whole little problem, because I'm not pro guns, but in a game they just solve a lot of problems. And now I don't have that solution, so I need to come up with alternate versions. So an obvious solution is pretty much look at the very first and earlier platformer games, or even Mario. You didn't really have any weapons, it's just a lot of jumping and avoiding. So there are gonna be creatures that you just have to avoid, which is the best course of action. But we can also add a bunch of interesting items, like an EMP that takes out certain electrical type creatures. And of course we also had the woofer and another item I added a few weeks ago. Can't remember its name, but they send out signals and that hurt certain kind of creatures. And by coming up with more of those type of items, I'll hopefully be able to just work around the whole problem of not having a gun in the game. And still have to figure out how to take care of all these hostile creatures. So even though most of the time is going to be on new content, which is great for these videos because most of it will be very visual, I've also been tweaking and changing and even fixing some stuff in the whole game engine and all the mechanics that are operating this world. I noticed a few bugs in the game engine that, well, they have been there since the beginning, just haven't noticed them before, and they are pretty much key to a lot of stuff happening. So it's it's a bit of a mystery how I didn't notice them earlier, but they're fixed now, so don't worry. Another thing I changed was the wind system. I introduced it a few weeks ago, and although the wind system worked, as certain planets will have a lot of wind, and then you see everything moving accordingly to the wind, either left or right, but that's not really how wind works. I came to that conclusion while doing one of my lunch break walks outside during the storm last week. Even if there is a lot of wind, it's not continuously blowing everything around. It's just, it comes in gushes. Not sure what the English word is, but gushes, I think. It comes in intervals. All right, so I changed all that to now have all these little twirly effects, which were just visual effects and did nothing, to now actually introduce wind to the area around it. So there's not a continuous wind blowing through the whole level or the whole game map. It's just where these little white twirly things are, that's where the wind is. And it's a very simple idea, but the effect is pretty amazing, because now you can actually see some flowers being blown in the wind while others aren't, and then they mix and match up and it looks a lot more natural. So having all this content being added is great, but we need fun gameplay and it needs to be interesting. So I need to come up with some interesting things here and there, and also the storyline for the whole game. Why are we there doing this or that? Or I know we crashed on a planet, but what's going on the planet? We have to explain it to the player in interesting ways, and I came up with some stuff. I'm not going to spoil the whole story or anything, but you might have already noticed there is a pink purplish ooze going everywhere. You might have also seen this in Snake Ore. You might have also seen it in Space Grunts. And all these games are linked and in the same universe, so this pink ooze will be again a big part of Residual. And I now actually came up with a good backstory of what it actually is, Residual, and what it actually wants and does and how it works and how it came to be, and all that stuff is now, I think I've got a good idea on it. So that's a good thing, because now I can actually use that when creating new characters and new creatures and whatever. I can now actually build it upon that little fact and story I have in my head and written down somewhere. And I also want to have that little bot that's hovering around you and giving you information and all that stuff. I want it to have more purpose in the game and maybe more character. So perhaps I'm gonna figure out some interesting puzzle type areas in a game that you actually control that little bot, and that way it will have more purpose and might be more interesting as a little character. So not sure yet if I'm gonna do it, but it's a very interesting idea. I just need to figure out how you're gonna control it and what can it do and should it do and does it want to do, and still some stuff to sort out, but we still have a couple of months before this game has to be done. So maybe next week I'll have more information on that. But that's it for this week's video. That's it. You actually managed to watch the whole video. You made it till the end. Well, almost the end. Still wrapping it up, and then you pretty much did it. Well done. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video. Comment below. Drop in the Discord. I'll be there and others are there. And see you next week with another devlog. I think that's, yeah. All right, see ya. I'm gonna be working very hard. I mean, yeah, inspiration. I'm not reading it again. It's just for inspiration. Cool. What? No. Yeah, inspiration.